started piano lessons when I was 5, maybe 4. And I got okay at it. I played, in Canada, Royal Conservatory up to grade 4. And in band in high school and middle school, I played clarinet. So lots of music. Music was something that felt more like work than it did a hobby at the time, especially band class. I would say around the summer of 2018, so a little under 2 years ago. For me, a time where I was very depressed and struggling with work and struggling with not knowing what I felt was wrong with me. And then I think very quickly I kind of came to the realization like, oh, I should probably talk to a gender therapist. Maybe there's like a gender thing happening here. And I think I came out to myself somewhere in September. That was a difficult process and a very fraught process for me, where, as I'm sure is true for a lot of people, there were a lot of walls I needed to break down around things that I thought were true or not true, or what I could or couldn't be, or things I was allowed to do or not do. So I kind of skimmed by a lot of the gendered markers earlier in life. And so when you do that and you start feeling the things that a lot of people feel when they're 6, 7 years old that are wrong with their gender, I didn't start feeling those till I was in my late 20s. And so I made a lot of music, and a lot of dark music. It was all work that I made in very much an art therapy process or an art therapy context, where that was a really rough winter for me. It was the winter before I started hormones, but I knew I was transitioning, and so it was kind of, it's dark and I'm waiting and things felt terrible, and just get all of those screams out in the form of this electronic music instead of sitting in my room and screaming for 2 hours. I felt for the first time the kind of intrinsic knowing and joy that I think a lot of people know or feel when they're really young, if that's their story, of oh, well, it's obvious I'm a woman. That's just the truth as it exists. And that experience for me was certainly a flashpoint to say, I had this experience, it felt so real and normal and obvious to me that now I'm going to take that forward and start transitioning and start figuring out where that goes. Noise music is a genre or a group of genres that prioritize texture, sound design over melody. I think that'd be the simplest way to put it. Art music is how I usually like to describe it, though that's almost a defense mechanism on my part to prepare people that it's going to be weird and unconventional. And I think a lot about how art therapy is often like painting, there are painting classes and things like that, where it's very analog and very freeform. People are encouraged to mess up a canvas, and it's not about creating a painting, it's about using paint to express yourself or to just get emotions out of your system. And so for me, the modular was that immediately. It was oh, I can hook a couple things together and get a sound, and then I can turn some knobs and change that sound. And I'm the kind of person who always wants to tackle the most esoteric and difficult and arcane aspects of a particular thing. So when it came to music being something oh, I should start a new hobby, I should try music, I went right for the thing that was complex and weird and required investigation. One thing that I consider magical about it is it's all based very literally on electricity. And so I kind of talk a lot to different people about how this is the closest thing that I'm actually gonna get to quote unquote real magic, in a sense of manipulating energy with my hand. And I kind of relate the process of patching to the process of sigil creation or inscribing a magic of taking feeling into reality. So I don't approach the modular or any music that I make from the perspective of, I want to make this kind of thing, let's go set out and make it or produce it. It's all analog, it is quite temperamental, and makes a lot of decisions on its own. And if you approach the system, the magical system or the electronic system with a feeling or a context rather than a goal, I think you get better work out of it. You get more interesting stuff out of it. So for me, I always come to the machine with something I'm feeling or something I need to get out of my system, and then see what comes up in the process of inscribing or patching. Gender dysphoria feels like being unable to cross a street, maybe. Days where I'm feeling dysphoric often feel like days where I need to try really, really hard to cross the street and get to where I feel comfortable. And days where I don't have a lot of dysphoria, the roads are empty. I think a lot of the time what's on the other side of the street is just not feeling bad, right? The other side of the street is comfort or normalcy as much as it is euphoria or a feeling good. These days, kind of I'm somewhere in the middle of my transition maybe. Days that are dysphoric are days where I just can't quite feel normal. I just can't quite feel like I can go about my day feeling like myself. It's not often a struggle for feeling good. All the things that I feel are normal for me, like being an outgoing, happy, fun person, are things that are clamped down on dysphoric days. You know, I think actually regardless of whether it's a good day or a bad day, if I'm making something beautiful or if I'm making something terrible, terrible in the context of like expressing terrible feelings, I think the feeling of making music for both of those is the same, which is feeling release and euphoria and ideally, on really good days with the music, feels like touching something sublime. And on really bad days, that expresses itself as making really dark music, something that like something from that Residue EP, which is dark and crackling and energetic, that goes to a place that is, or that expresses a sense of relief by moving to that place. And on good days, when I'm making ambient, like glassy, beautiful ambient music, those days are when you don't have to go from the dark place to the light place. That's where you start in the beautiful place and you try to make something beautiful. I mean, I do think it's really important, especially for women or queer people in any hobby or space, but I think particularly electronic music, which is very skewed towards the like male-dominated straight world. It's really important to have a place, I think, where you can get a sense of what being in front of other people is like without the risk of real people. And by real people, I mean people you don't know, or strangers, or people who aren't aware of the context of what you're doing. I want to get more into the teaching side and the community side of things. That's something that I've always been pretty good at, and I really enjoy. It's very gratifying to me, and I feel like I've been doing this for just about 3 years now, and I'm a really quick study, and I feel like I have a lot to offer. I'm hoping that, in the end, after this is all done, I've made more space for other queer people in electronic music. And there are a lot of us already, but it's not something that I think a lot of people know about. So I want to make it more clear and more obvious that electronic music is kind of run by queer people, and people should know about it.